Hello everyone. I would like to start my presentation by asking people a few questions. Do you engage with news websites? Do you think that some of these news websites track you by some means of personalization? Have you seen similar ads across multiple different websites and wondered how is this happening? In this work of Stop Tracking Me Bro, differential tracking of user demographics on hyperpartisan news websites, I am going to present you answers to these questions. This work is in collaboration with amazing teammates. We have Sagar Joglekar from King's College London, Panagoitis Papadopoulos from Brave, Nishant Shastri from King's College London, Nicholas Cortelis from Telefonica Research, and I am Pushkal Agrawal presenting this work. We have made this dataset and code publicly available, which is used in this research. To understand our work, I would like to give two pieces of background. First is hyperpartisan websites and second is differential tracking. When we think about popular news such as BBC, Washington Post, New York Times and so forth, they all have a notion of journalistic balance. Any story can have 2 points, and this journalistic balance says that both views on a story should be covered. But we see with the hyperpartisan news websites, they explicitly say that they are pro-left or pro-right. In the dataset which we have, we use a list of hyperpartisan news websites created by BuzzFeed. This list was created by checking the description on Facebook pages, home pages of these hyperpartisan news websites, and if they declare their political leaning. Partisan treatment of news story can be seen from an example here. Here is a story from Daily Briefings on COVID-19 by Donald Trump, published by Fox News, which is extreme right, and MSNBC, which is extreme left. I checked news stories last week on both and found different views for a similar kind of news coverage. On the one hand, Fox News supports the remarks celebrating American truckers' efforts, whereas on the other hand, MSNBC states that daily briefings damage Donald Trump politically. Let us start with some background of online tracking. Just before the lockdown in the UK, during last month, I thought of checking for flights to my hometown in India. I did what we all do. I went online and checked price for flights on some popular booking websites. Have I actually booked any flight and was able to travel or not? That's another story. But what I later realized that day while scrolling my news feeds that somehow I was getting similar ads for flights along with the news feeds. But I also see the very next day is again a flight related ad on my social media. So what has happened here? This is basically due to the tracking ecosystem of the web. This tracking is happening with the help of a cookie, which is injected in your browser by some first or third party domain and is later used to identify user browsing patterns. One question one might ask here, which news website I was visiting? Sophisticated models are used to track users across websites. We now see what is actually differential tracking. Differential tracking means that people are tracked differently by a set of websites. For instance, are left websites tracking user differently than right websites? Are there different kinds of users being tracked differently by hyperpartisan websites? For example, women getting more tracked than men. We formally draft our research questions on these as: do we see differential tracking on hyperpartisan news websites? Does this differential tracking translate to any monetary benefit? answer this multifaceted question, we present our three steps. In step 1, we craft artificial personas representing different demographics. In step 2, we load browsers with personas and visit hyperpartisan news websites, which we recently discussed. And step 3, we observe differences among left, right, and the general web. So let us first see how our machinery creates artificial personas. A persona is inferred from the previous websites being visited by a user. For this website list, we ask Alexa, not the one which plays songs, but another subsidiary of Amazon known as Alexa.com, founded in 1996. Alexa.com gives insights of users on websites, global and regional ranking based on the website's performance, as well as interested websites for a given demographics. In our research, we focus on two key demographics which are provided, such as gender and age. We also make pairs of these key demographics, such as age plus gender. For an example, a woman demographic is based on the websites which have information and products related to women. To create such demograph, we take example of websites such as Cosmopolitan, which is a women's magazine for fashion. Then we visit womensday.com, which is known for recipes and relationship advice, and sheknows.com, which is a website related to parenting, and so forth. We automate this website visiting behavior using an open source tool by researchers at Princeton University known as OpenWPM. They also publish their findings with this tool by visiting top 1 million ranked websites by Alexa.com that I recently mentioned. Using this tool, we visited many top websites for each demographics. We realized that after visiting around 10 websites, in the plot on the right, that the distinct number of third-party cookies, which is on the y-axis, it's not increasing much. The number of third-party cookies is a popular indicative of tracking, which is covered in many popular studies. We also conclude with this plot that even for a stable persona, the amount of third-party tracking varies a lot. The least number of third-party are observed in youth persona, which is created by visiting websites where youngsters are mostly interested. This is in accordance to the Child Online Protection Act, popularly known as the COPA law of 1998 in the US. For the maximum, we see that women persona are getting highest number of third-party cookies. Using the personas trained in step 1, we now move our focus on testing them on hyperpartisan news websites. We check the effect of loading a null persona with no history, which also act as a baseline, a woman persona, which we discussed with examples of websites, and other personas created from the key demographics such as men, youth, senior, and combinations of those. In this schematic diagram, we show four main components of our machinery. The first is the user persona, which we create and load, as we have already discussed. The second is the hyperpartition websites, which are left and right, on which we want to check the effect of these personas. The third in the middle is the OpenWPM tool, which is used for orchestration. And the fourth is the SQLite database, which is used for storing the website logs. For the research community, we have made this dataset, methodology, and parts of the code public. You can check the dataset via this link. In total, we have generated 40 GB of data with millions of HTTP requests, responses, and cookies. After setting up the machinery and collecting data, let us now move to see some observational differences. In these differences, we are interested in knowing if right hyperpartisan websites track users differently from left hyperpartisan websites.